morning. Welcome back to Free to Grow. I don't know if we were planning on doing syrup today, but again, one of those things, kind of had to do syrup today. So it's really nice outside. The sap is flowing. We are just learning so much stuff. It's a new venture. You know, you guys know how it is. You embark on something new and it's just like so exciting and wonderful, but okay, this is a whole new thing because it lasts for weeks. So here we are, collecting the last of what's literally in our front yard to end this batch. He didn't even realize he was gonna be doing so much today because it's just, since he started, has everything filled back up again basically, or?
I pulled them last night.
Oh yeah, he collected everything last night, anticipating starting this today. And you might want to turn that music off. So what, now you have twice as much sap as you thought you were going to boil down today?
Probably, yeah. I've kind of actually lost count.
So because all week it was like not really getting that warm during the day, it was going above freezing, but not like today. Today's like 60 degrees. So we collected over 6 days, like the same amount that we get in one day today, because it was nice and cold last night and then sun shining, 60 degrees today. So
I've found a rhythm. Like Wednesdays have been my cooking syrup days, so I'm just like, when the weather's right. So we're just saving it up throughout the week. Cook it on Wednesday. I'll be done with, now everything's empty, and I'll let it fill up like tomorrow and keep it in the cooler because it'll be good all week. And cook. So I'm cooking once a week right now.
And we've been doing it for, what do you think, 4 or 5 weeks? 5 weeks probably this week.
Really?
Yeah.
More like 3.
Because it was 2 weeks ago that Lauren was here, and that was our third batch. Or second. So how are you feeling about just the setup and how we did everything for the first time ever?
I feel good about it. It's working. It's all working.
Right. Like, I don't know if, even looking back, just in this past month, if we really would have done anything different.
No, I mean, if anything, I'm liking I might store water jugs up more because I like the water jugs, because when I drive by on the four-wheeler I can see if they're full, and I'm not worried about the buckets tipping over and stuff. They're snug with the hoses, so distilled water jugs have been good. Now, that being said, when it's flowing, you could have to dump them one or twice a day, whereas like those 5-gallon buckets, I could leave them for a few days and not worry about them overflowing or anything.
And that was our thought. We were newbies. We had no idea. We're like, oh, we need these giant buckets to catch all this sap. And thus far, we haven't really needed to do that. But we do have the ability to be checking on them multiple times a day. Whereas if you're gone for 12 hours a day, you're probably going to be wanting those 5-gallon buckets at the very least, right?
Or the bags, sap bags, which...
And the good flowing trees. I mean, they're not all...
Yeah.
Producing that much.
Yeah, one of the trees I checked put out like 3 gallons since yesterday.
How about the new ones that we tapped?
One of them put out 3 gallons. Like it just was flowing. I knew when I tapped it that it was juicy.
Wow, that's great.
Fresh, straight from the tree. Super fresh. Just drink it. That might be 30 gallons, what's left of 30 gallons of sap.
So you think we're going to get a quart today, or a...
No, I think we could almost get a half gallon. I'm shooting for a half gallon just today. Last time we almost got that. Well, we got 2.5 pints.
That's a quart. That's a little over a quart. Yeah. Our first year of making syrup has gone really well. We've been blessed with nice weather, once a week probably at least, to have this day where we evaporate the sap outside. And as far as homesteading goes, this is a good time of year to add something in to do. It gets a little quiet around here on the homestead during these winter months, and I've even been wanting to take more frequent and longer walks in this second trimester of my pregnancy to help stay active.
Now he's still in like work again. The surface pretty clean.
That it?
That's it. I'm
So
ready to pull this. and then when it happens quick. So I'm just like looking kind of at the thickness of it. The bubbles start to change a little bit. I mean, I've been watching it all day. So when you've been watching all day, you start to notice when it's doing different stuff.
Right.
But also just I know how much now to gauge like how much syrup we get from how much sap, and we're getting about there.
Unfortunately, it's not a perfect science because we can't let there be any empty space on the bottom, which happened in that back corner, because then it starts burning.
But
so you have to pull it off before it gets there.
You think about this being 30 gallons, so 6 5-gallon buckets of liquid that is now this much liquid that will maybe fill that pan.
Right.
Then,
like, do you think that's half an inch thick or less?
I mean, here, maybe a half an inch. Back here, a quarter of an inch, you know? Like,
yeah.
It's a little bit off. But I also kind of am liking that it's off a little bit, because it also helps me gauge how much is in here. But it might have a ways to go, but we'll finish it inside where we have more control, and it still won't take that long. But
you're gonna get the hose now?
The hose is here. I'm gonna spray it. I'm gonna put the fire out so it's less intense when I'm doing this. I don't know about Charlie being out here.
That's one thing that we didn't do the first 2 times. We tried to dump this with everything was like super hot. So the last time he put the fire out with a hose, and he's gonna do that again now. Then we're gonna dump what's in the evaporation pan to this pan and get it inside.
See how the bubbles are starting to like
get real tiny and
do weird stuff.
This out again. I think got ashes in it. You're still doing fine though. You don't want it too far, because
move the pan a little bit if you can. We're good.
There we go. Okay.
Kind of kept going.
Perfect.
Either we got a long way still to go, or we've got just a lot more sap. Having trouble getting that last bit. Whew. The other handle's gonna be hot too.
Yeah.
Woohoo! The first time we did this process, this part was really intense. We were rushing around, pulling the sap off the evaporator. We ran inside. We were concerned that time was of the essence. Now that we've done it a couple times, we realize that's not true, and we can take our time with this part. So we're kind of pre-filtering before we do our final filter and jarring process of the syrup. And we're just pouring this through some cheesecloth. We decided this time to double up the cheesecloth just because it caught a lot more of that niter and some of the little dust and stuff floating in the air. Some of that particles that this way it won't clog up our pre-filter when we go to finally jar the syrup. And Liz is just showing here how much of that stuff we caught just through a couple layers of cheesecloth. And this just helps preserve
your filter and help the filtering process, the final filtering process, go a little quicker so you don't clog it up with all that stuff. And now we're going to use our digital candy thermometer to finish the syrup.
Okay, so what's the theory?
It's not a theory.
The scientific theory of yours?
Well, boiling point here is 212. We're hitting 212 right now. It's not my theory. It's what I researched. Now we're boiling. That's our rolling boil right at 212. So we're cooking it 7 degrees above our boiling point, or wherever your location, your boiling point is, because it changes because of altitude. So we're cooking to 219. It doesn't matter how hot that burner was, it won't get that high until the water content is low enough or the sugar content is high enough for it to get that high. That's why this finishing process takes a little bit. Now see, if it jumped right away to like 213, 214, 215, I'd say, oh, we're pretty close. Well, 213, so. Now in here, it's why it's better to do it inside is like this starts to foam up like crazy, so you can dial the heat back a little bit to control that. You just have more control, so you're not scorching foam. And we're at 214, so we pulled it at probably a pretty safe, good time to pull it.
So now we want to let the syrup cool down to 190 degrees, and this is for the final filtration and the canning of the syrup. So we've got some just regular ball mason jars in the oven. We heat those up to 190 to sanitize them, but also to make sure we don't break a jar when we add hot syrup in. And this is our pre-filter and filter. The pre-filters are a paper cone that are disposable, and the other filter is kind of like felt. The first couple jars go pretty quick because that filter isn't clogged up yet. And once it gets too clogged, you can just swap out one of the disposable ones for a fresh one. But that's why we did the double layer of cheesecloth, and it helped our filters last a little longer this time. So you see I'm just turning the ball jar upside down and right side up. It helps sanitize the inside of the jar, but also that'll create some pressure, and the lid will pop and the syrup is stored in the jar. I think last thing we were doing here was some beef jerky, and I'll tell you, that's just because Liz has been hungry all the time with this pregnancy, and some good source of protein is nice to have around to grab and snack on. And this batch is already gone. I need to start another batch, but I'm just finishing. My jerky had been in the dehydrator all day, and then I just finish it in the oven real quick and kind of pat off any of the extra fat or oils that come off the jerky. We store it in Tupperware, and it just sits on the counter. It usually doesn't last too long. It's a simple jerky. We typically use like a London broil, slice it thin, and run it through dehydrator. We'd kind of a sweet, slightly spicy jerky, and like I said, it doesn't last very long. The last thing we're doing today is some winter chicken stuff. We're getting to the end of winter, but this winter we've just watered our chickens with a black rubber hog pan. And every time I go down to feed the chickens or check for eggs, I just fill up one of these water gallons and bring it down there and give them fresh water. We like the rubber hog pans during the winter because when they freeze up, they're flexible, so you can flip them over, knock the ice out, and just add fresh water. We've broken chicken waterers in the winter, and they're not cheap because the plastic ones get brittle, and so we moved our chickens just around pasture with our Premier One fence this year inside of a John Soskovich chicken tractor. We decided to not put the chickens in an indoor coop. We just know that our chickens do a lot better when they're on clean grass and moving, and the parasite load stays down, the chickens stay happy and healthy. And other than putting a little bit of greenhouse plastic on the front and back of the Soskovich tractor just to really block the wind, that's it. It makes those winter chicken chores a little bit easier. It also just gets you out and moving around. You got to move the chickens, and there's really just nothing like seeing your animals on fresh grass. Now, we did lose, I think, 2 chickens this winter, but it really had nothing to do with cold weather, and I think actually when we lost a couple, it was on some of the warmer days, but We had one from an aerial predator, and we had one that was just an old girl. We've got a few chickens in our flock that were our first chickens that we received from a friend, and they were already laying, and they've slowed down, but they've provided for us, and man, I am just having a really hard time choosing to call those chickens. They still serve a purpose here. You know, I think they do put out an egg every once in a while, but they also help us to scratch up the garden and prepare the garden and make compost. So they might just be my secondary compost chickens here shortly. I'm thinking maybe I'll move them into their own little chickshaw tractor and let them do their thing, and let my main egg-laying flock do their thing. Well, this was a long day, a busy day, and we had it in our minds that we wanted to move the chickens tonight because we had some rain in the forecast, and it's always nice to get them to a fresh area before we get some rain because it can get muddy in these late winter days. So Liz came out and helped me. When it's the two of us, we can move these nets pretty quick. Down here we have 2 separate lengths of Premier One poultry net, and we just used the 2 linked together to give the chickens more space. So we got the chickens moved before it got too dark on us. The one thing I always forget when I'm down here is some fresh straw for the nesting boxes, and actually we've run out of straw for the season, but I realized that there's a bunch of fresh straw or grass or whatever growing right along this tree line over here. So why not work with nature? Grabbed some of that stuff up and threw it in their nesting boxes. They seem to like that just fine. Keeps our eggs clean and keeps them from cracking. And so we'll just throw that in there and call it a day. Thanks for joining us on Free to Grow, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.